Welcome to the Future Thinkers Podcast. I'm Mike Gilliland.
And I'm Yulia Ivanova. And this podcast is all about the future.
Hey guys, welcome to episode number 34 of the Future Thinkers Podcast. Today, we're super excited to have Duncan Trussell on the show. For those of you who don't know, Duncan is a comedian. He's the host of the Duncan Trussell Family Hour podcast, and he's also a regular guest on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. He's hilarious. He's really out there. He loves talking about things like consciousness, the state of the world, acid, the future, all kinds of stuff. So we've had a lot in common and a lot of interesting conversations with him over the course of 2 episodes, because we're breaking this into 2. So the first one, we talk about death, apocalypse, all kinds of heavy topics. And then the second one, we get into lighter stuff, spirituality, Bhagavad Gita. So hope you like it. Before we get into it, we do have some announcements. Yuvi and I have been super busy in the last couple months launching some stuff.
Yeah. Oh man, we've done a lot of stuff in the last month. We just launched the Future Thinkers community finally. You can check that out at community.futurethinkers.org. It was pretty cool to see that in the first couple days we got over 100 members, I think. We also just launched the Cutting Machinery website, which is the companion website to the meditation app that we released with Vinay Gupta a few months back. So there's a bunch of articles there, and we're going to be putting more content on there. And it's all to do with meditation, resilience, training your mind, spiritual development, how to prepare yourself for the
Trump apocalypse. As well, we are asking our listeners who've had experience using the app or just experience outside of the app using meditation to get over any kind of trauma or difficult situations. And we want to hear about your experience, how you have developed in your meditation over time. So there's been a few people who've done guest articles on the website already, and we invite more of you guys to participate.
Yeah, you can just go to cuttingmachinery.org.
Cutting machinery. Cut. Lastly, we wanted to let you guys know that we're offering a sponsorship program for the podcast and our future-focused incubator that we're going to be building in Plovdiv, Bulgaria. The focus is going to be blockchain technologies and virtual reality, and then eventually sustainable energy, a number of other future-related technologies. So we are really aiming to build Future Thinkers, build the brand, make a lot more content, not just podcast episodes, but videos and graphics, and release content a lot more regularly. So we're looking for corporate sponsors or any startups that are involved in the blockchain space and are funded to support the show for a minimum of a year. And what you'll get in return is your logo on the end of each of the show notes pages. You'll get a logo on the website. You'll get a brief mention at the beginning of each episode. Basically, your logo, if you're very much related to what we talk about, will be plastered across our brands. So we're looking for sponsorship, we're looking for investment, and we're also looking for mentors. So if you feel like you can contribute on any one of those levels, let us know.
Before we get into this episode, I want to say thank you to all of our recent donors and patrons. Thank you, Josiah, for upping your Patreon pledge. That was really awesome. And also thank you to Catherine, Anake, and Christian. You guys rock. All right, let's get into the show. So nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you too. And just so you guys know, I've got about an hour and then I'm moving. I'm in the middle of moving, so I'm up to my neck in boring tasks outside of this, which is wonderful. But I've got all this, packing up cords and incredibly mundane things that I have to do.
So on the other hand, what's the least mundane thing that's happening right now?
The least mundane thing, I'll tell you, and it's actually might seem, where are you guys located?
Bulgaria.
And Istanbul.
Okay, well, this might seem mundane to you guys, but it's raining in Los Angeles, which is glorious because it never rains here. So that makes my day. Whenever we get any kind of rain at all, it's just magical. So that currently is what I'm the most excited about. Boring.
That's so earthy.
You don't realize how much you need it if you don't get weather. Weather is so important in California because we're in this rotten drought. You just don't get weather. You get a never-ending, beautiful day, which sounds on paper fantastic maybe, but in reality, it's kind of hellish. It's like something out of some terrible and lazy existentialist play or something. Just unremitting, beautiful days so that you're forced to recognize the darkness of your own heart. So, it seems like there's this never-ending trickle of news coming in about discoveries regarding plants and animals that we formerly just wrote off as being unintelligent or completely unaware, which is a pretty, what do they call it? Anthropocentric, but now all this, you find out, actually, well, a tree is incredibly tuned into its environment and connecting and communicating with all the other plant life. And so if there's a drought happening, the human thinks, God, everything's kind of yellow. Ugh. But really what you're watching is you're seeing death. You're looking out at the death of all of these living things that are just slowly withering because of a lack of rain. You're watching things essentially die of thirst around you. And then that reminds you of the climate change that is apparently happening. And then that puts you in a nice apocalyptic mind state, especially when you mix that in with the fact that we have nearly legal marijuana here. So it's really easy to be constantly stoned.
I was just at the fish market today in Istanbul. We were shopping for dinner, and me and my friend were just looking at the racks of fish and shrimp and everything. We were saying to each other, like, in about 20 years, none of these fish are going to be around.
Yeah.
And that's crazy.
Scary. Maybe less. I mean, it seems like right now you have to pick between subscribing to a comforting conspiracy theory that there is some cabal of scientists working for the UN who want to convince the people of the earth that the planet is going through climate change when in fact everything's fine. You either subscribe to that or you have to subscribe to the probably more likely scenario that we're entering into a mass extinction or something that people have been writing about for a very long time and have a lot of different names for. Scientists call it climate change. Religious people call it the apocalypse. It's the same word. It's just funny with the way that the modern way of talking about the end of the world is climate change, even though it's not the end of the world. Actually, one of my favorite George Carlin bits is he says, the planet's fine. Things die on this planet, have been dying on this planet for millions of years. It's just a normal thing for things to get wiped out on this planet and then for new life to come. The planet's fine. Humans are fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not really scary. I mean, it's scary on one level, but on another level, when you really look deep into yourself, or me, when I think of the things I'm truly afraid of, the big ones like climate change being like wiped out by some plague or a flood or a massive tornado with powers never before seen. These things are so distant and impossible to connect to that I don't really feel afraid of them. And that's probably the problem, right? Is that it's hard for the majority of people on the planet to connect with something so massive and so seemingly far away as the ice caps. Like, what does that even mean to most people who have kids that don't have enough food? One of the major problems our species is facing is the inability to recognize global challenges and to work together in a global way to fix them.
It's funny how we notice that transition is like, oh, look, the price of tomatoes went up.
Right. Yeah. Or, here it's like, well, there's no avocados. Like you go to a Mexican restaurant, they're like, yeah, no guacamole, no avocados. You're like, what? Like, well, there's just like, avocado problem. Like, wait, what? There's no avocado? What are you talking? All right. I guess there's no avocados.
The world's out of that fish, out of stock.
That's crazy. Yeah. And it's funny because I really do love thinking about the singularity, which is another word for the apocalypse, the way that movies have conditioned us to think, okay, well, I know what the end of the world is going to look like, because the way we think the end of the world looks, if you've grown up watching post-apocalyptic movies, is there's this sudden event, meteor impact, or like over a course of a couple of weeks, some disaster happens. But to see the way that it is probably really happening, which is, like you're saying, just conveniences that we've been taking for granted, just one after the other, just kind of go away. You'll see an elephant in the zoo, maybe. Giraffes. Yeah, it looks like the giraffes are saying goodbye. It's like the party is beginning to end. It's like the party consisting of all living things on this planet. Some of them are starting to make French exits. Where'd the giraffes go? Oh, they didn't even say goodbye. They just vanished, huh? Well, no more giraffes. They were cool.
I grew up in the Soviet Union, actually, and that's what it was like in the late 80s. I mean, you just walk into a store and the shelves are empty, and the lady at the front says, well, sorry, there's no bread today. Well, what do you have? Well, we have rice. Like, it's just kind of this quiet desperation. Wow. And everybody's miserable, and there's violence, and there's probably a lot of alcoholism and stuff like that, but there's nothing dramatic happening on a day-to-day basis. It's just getting progressively worse.
Mm-hmm. I was walking down the street the other day and looking at all the candy shops and thinking like there's all this conflict in Turkey right now, and the Russian ambassador was just shot the other day, and I could hear a car bomb from my window about a week ago. So just crazy shit, right? But I'm walking down the street and it's like a sort of a mix of a European, Middle Eastern, and Asian market, sort of like, I don't know, the streets are really lively and cool, and there's candy shops everywhere. Like every third shop has got a candy shop. And I was thinking like, I don't know if it's a farce, if anyone's buying that, like how these guys are staying open, because you sense the desperation, but at the same time, there's all of this commerce going on. And
what are the roots of so the desperation is coming from the turbulence being caused by what?
The political situation.
Can you describe the political situation to me? Because for one thing, over here, we're foggy on what is happening just because we're not sure if we can even trust our news. It's like a confusion is happening here because people are starting to wonder if a lot of the news that we're getting over here is propaganda. We don't know what's happening. Like, for example, the situation in Syria, there's two different stories that people are telling about that situation. And one of them is these rebels are the, quote, good guys, and they're being wiped out by Russia and Assad. And then the other story is, no, those are ISIS radical Islamic militants who, if we don't take care of them now, then there's going to be more assassinations and more car bombings. And one story, help them liberate Syria, and the other is just get rid of them like they're zombies, wipe them all out completely. And there's, of course, shades of those stories. Which one is true?
Well, yeah, I think it's like there's no moderation in news, and that's part of the problem. Everyone's trying to get the most clicks and attention, and that's why clickbait's such a thing. So it's like it's not even so much that the story is being manipulated, although I'm sure it is, but there's just such extremism in how the story is being communicated that no one knows what side to believe anymore. It's like bomb them all or save them all. I don't know what I'm supposed to do in this situation.
And here's another sad thing, is that so many of these events are happening now. It's difficult to keep up with them because there's actually now minor car bombings, like minor suicide bombings, where it's like, only 4 people were killed in that one. So I'm not even going to look into that one. It was just 4 people versus 50. That's how crazy things have gotten. That's how strange things are. But there was some video that popped up of one of these jihadis with 2 children. Did you see that? The 2 children who were used as suicide bombers recently. Did you see that?
Oh, God.
No, I didn't.
So he's sitting with them. He says, Islam is a religion of glory, not a religion of humiliation. And these 2 children were like going to be martyred, as they call it. And he's like saying to the kids, are you afraid to die? And they're like, no. And, they ended up killing a bunch of people, apparently. Again, is that real? Is it propaganda? I don't know. I saw the video, looked real. Like you're saying, we want extremes are preferable to shades because extremes you can deal with. If there's an extreme problem, if we are surrounded by like something that is definitely trying to kill us and has a kind of unified goal, then it's easy to fix that problem, though horrible the way you may want to fix it. But it kind of seems like humanity is entering into this age where certain operating systems aren't working anymore for the kind of software that we're trying to run right now. And some kind of archaic view of religion doesn't work anymore, or it's mixing in with new ways of looking at the planet, and it just doesn't work. I mean, living in the United States, I'm fully aware of the fact that we are constantly bombing people accidentally. I think about that. Like, people are horrified when a person intentionally walks into a mosque and blows up a bunch of people. But in the United States, it's kind of overlooked that we accidentally kill people all the time, which is so fucked up. In fact, the intentional killing, sometimes I think, like, if you had to choose between being intentionally murdered or accidentally murdered, which would you want? Accidentally getting stepped on by some giant thing drunk on its own power, or intentionally blown up by some desperate thing? I don't know. I hope I never have to make that decision. But do you guys think the problem is religion, or a faulty or outdated understanding of a world religion?
I think that a big part of it is that people aren't looking at the facts, and whether it's religion clouding their judgment, or just oversimplification, or that they're just not thinking on their own. But I think a big part of it is that people just aren't looking at facts. And we have more data now than we have ever had in human history. And that's what blows my mind.
Right.
So whether it's because of religion or because of something else, I don't think it matters. I think it matters just that people aren't thinking straight.
I was going to say the exact same thing, observing facts. I've heard something recently, more people are killed by bee stings than terrorism, or something like that. Like, that's insane.
More people are killed by furniture than terrorists in the States.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I don't know why. This morning I've decided to blow the apocalypse trumpet with you guys. I don't even know why. I didn't want it to necessarily get so dark, but let me just point this out. And yeah, I thought that too. It's like, come on, really? Like, more people are killed by sharks drowning, heart attacks. More people are killed by things falling off of overpasses, or the lightning strikes, or what, you name it. You name it. You can come up with a lot of mosquitoes. Jesus Christ! Or like, one of the things I used to think is, if I really was ISIS, if I was running ISIS, I would just start selling free cigarettes. That's gonna kill way more people. So many more people. The tobacco companies are just wiping people out. No one even mentions that. Oxycontin. Really, like, if ISIS wanted to get organized, start a pharmaceutical company that sells some kind of hyper addictive opiate and sell tobacco, and you're gonna just kill so many infidels. But that being said, I did this interview once with someone over at this place, Singularity University, this guy, Aaron Frank, and they're studying the acceleration of technology and the types of technology that are suddenly accessible to people that formerly weren't, and how you can kind of map which technologies we don't have access to, which eventually you will be able to have access to, or at least will be relatively easy and inexpensive to assemble. And some of these that he mentioned are potentially the ability for the individual to shoot your own personal satellite up into space, right? Like, and the other, of course, is wet works.
Oh, wet labs.
Yeah, wet labs. The ability for the individual to genetically modify things and to build things by altering DNA using technology that right now most people don't have. So. And also, you have to add into those two things the third thing, which is the unknown technology that isn't here yet that will come. So what he was saying is, well, eventually it's going to get to the point where any motivated individual will have the ability to create some kind of weapon that could do catastrophic damage to society. It's not here yet, but it will definitely be there eventually. And so the idea of, like, yes, bees kill more people, which is absolutely true. Yes, right now bees are more dangerous than terrorists, for sure. But from the 10, 20, 30-year perspective, if there's some kind of mind virus, whatever you want to call it, if a new religion forms, or if some very charismatic techno cult leader who comes up with some, and by the way, I don't think this will happen, but imagine some new messiah appears, some merger of an AI and a human, not afraid of death, that has as one of its tenets, if you help me wipe out people, then I'll let you stay alive. Just some ridiculous sci-fi scenario, not even Islam. But if there is any kind of mind, if there's any kind of cognitive POV that does not include the entire planet or the what they call the sanctity of life, or the importance of, regardless of where a person's at in their life, if they're not harming other people, helping them have a good life. If there's something that's the opposite of that, well, yeah, right now they're using what technology they have to kill people for an imaginary thing. Again, like when somebody kills people for freedom, which is the awful mantra that we've heard here, the liberation of Iraq, for example, that George W. Bush did, and then something about freedom. He might as well be saying we liberated Iraq for Allah. Both of them are words that are completely up for interpretation. What does that even fucking mean, man? But the idea that we're looking at like a militant religion, or parts of a religion are militant, better way to say it, or militarizing. And there is the potential in the future for them to obtain nuclear weapons, potentially, bioweapons, those kinds of things. Then in the short term, yeah, it's just like chaos in smaller parts of the world. But in the long term, it could get really bad. And I'm not a right-wing person. I'm not a left-wing person. I don't want to kill anybody. I think I want us to achieve what they call a type 1 civilization. I want us to achieve full connectivity so that we can begin to move into space and wake up an artificial and super intelligence with technology. That is an outcome that I would like to see, or create for the intelligent people on the planet, and then not everyone on the planet, to sort of join together to work on telescopes that could potentially identify alien civilizations. Things like that appeal to me. That's what I would prefer. But if there's something standing in the way of that, which is equivalent to a child that doesn't want to stop believing in Santa Claus, to the point that the child is willing to start burning down the houses of people who don't believe in Santa Claus, then I think at that point, you have to do something that doesn't make sense from the perspective of cultural relativism, or the idea of like everyone deserves to live the way they get to live. Well, up until a point when that doesn't necessarily work if some group of people, the way they want to live is by converting an entire planet to a religion. And at the cost of, if you don't convert, I'm sorry. You know what it is? I don't even know why I did this. I went on Reddit, watch people die. And I was watching these ISIS death videos. Have you guys seen any of those?
Yeah.
Yep.
Jesus. Holy fuck. Like, not only is it the most violent thing I've ever seen in my life, it's also really well shot. Like, apparently ISIS has access to some great cinematographer or something.
And they take pride in it.
Yeah.
Yes.
They've got dolly shots and... Yeah.
Yes, they have a dolly in a place where they're slicing people's throats. Like, what is happening? That is so absurd to me. And something about the perfection of their techniques in shooting snuff films, essentially, makes me feel a lot less compassion than maybe I formerly felt. And it makes me think, oh, these are like praying mantises or something. They're not like they're fully infected with a mind virus that is, I don't see how you fix that. Like, I don't see how I take somebody who shot a film in a slaughterhouse with humans hanging upside down and their throats being cut. I don't know how many Ram Dass retreats or how many ayahuasca sessions it's going to take to make that person realize that maybe that's not what God wants us to do on this planet. Like, Allah is not saying, hey, can you guys maybe get some better lighting in there for God when you're slicing these people's throats? You know, it's a problem. It's a real problem. Like it's a shitty problem because at least it's a shitty problem because how do you fix? I don't even know how you fix it.
You said a few minutes ago, like, what do you think the problem is? Is it religion? And a few days ago, I was looking at Google Maps and just kind of looking at the area because I'm in Istanbul, and I zoomed out and saw, all of the Middle Eastern countries. And I noticed, it's not the first time I've looked at a map, but obviously there's this giant yellow patch in this area where like Algeria, Niger, Libya, Egypt, Sudan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, all of these countries are in this yellow patch that is so concentrated nowhere else in the world than there. And it's not the first time I've heard people say that it's not necessarily religion, it's environment,
climate change,
access to resources, climate change. Exactly.
Yes, I've heard this too. And why the climate change? Well, the climate change is because of industrialization and it's technology. We're not effectively using energy supplies. So, which is creating all these problems. Okay, fine. It's climate change. Fine. So if instead of, like, okay, all of us, let's imagine that instead of us being separated in the way we are through the internet, all of us are in a place where a flood is beginning to happen. We need to work together so that we don't drown. But some of us, I don't know, one of you or me, we start referring to some book of magic. And from reading the book of magic, our determination about the rising waters is that we've angered an invisible being who, rather than just having a conversation with us, is having a conversation with us through this rising water. And that the problem is one of us didn't wear the right headwear. This is why the God is angry. This is why the water's rising. So if I stone that person to death, maybe the water will stop rising. Or even better, it'll just please this loony God that talks to people by murdering them through catastrophes. See, that's the problem. What we need is for everyone to refer to a humanistic concept of like, look, we did this. There's no angry person who's like, why didn't you read the book that I gave to the guy who said it in the right way? Whoever that guy may be, Moses, Jesus, whatever. It just needs to be more pragmatic, which is like if you imagine the amount of heroism and courage and overcoming the fear of death, first temptation of the Buddha, that a lot of these militants have achieved. And I'm not saying that what they're doing is good, but you can't argue that they're fucking brave. They have overcome some basic human desire to stay alive, and they are giving their lives for this belief. That's the tragedy, because that very same energy, imagine if that was being applied to let's bring the world into a connected state so that we can use our resources to create the living conditions that will allow people to suffer less. Imagine that. That's what's really sad about it. The very same energy that these people are, and I'm not just saying the radical Islamic militant people, but the very same energy that anyone who is taking the time to figure out how to build weapons to blow people up, if that was being applied to how do we desalinate ocean water in an energy efficient way, or how do we get clean water to people? Because we can get clean water to people, we wipe out a huge percentage of the world's diseases, So that kind of stuff, that's the frustrating thing. But instead, that energy is being generated by an operating system that doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. It will work. By the way, I'm sorry for this rant, but it will work. The operating system of any fundamentalist religion will work. It will work after you have completely wiped out civilization. Then that's definitely going to work. Like if you can successfully take out the power grid, or you can successfully somehow create enough global disruption that a nuclear holocaust happens, then in the non-radioactive patches of land where you're building your post-apocalyptic village, your fundamentalist religion will definitely work. You can burn witches. You can, you know what I mean? It'll totally work. You can start burning witches again. You can just, but that isn't going to work as long as this new form of life that's that's forming on the planet is happening. Also, the new form of life, by that I mean the modern civilization that we're all enjoying in different ways, this can't continue unless the people who are devotees of this civilization come up with a way to harmonize so that this can continue to grow.
I can't help but feel like the resilience and strength and hardness required to either fight the opposing powers or do what's necessary to change the world in the right direction just doesn't exist in the West.
People are pussies.
Yeah, they're so comfortable. The fire is not under their asses enough to make that change. That's something we've been talking about quite a bit.
Yeah, and also there's been a kind of concerted effort to keep us from feeling the fire under our asses.
Exactly.
True journalism would be if on our news, if instead of showing SNL made fun of Donald Trump last night, they really got him this time, they were showing devastation.
Aleppo,
the horror over and over again. Look, this is happening on your planet. This is happening. If they were doing that, there would be change. But the problem is that we have these completely unthought out ideas of what apparently we can show people. We can't show them that. Why not? Well, because of the children. Oh, really? So you can't show them children being blown up because you want to protect children? That doesn't make any sense at all. You have to show the people what's actually happening. And whatever the forces are that are keeping the media from illuminating what is actually happening on this planet, or trying to put some kind of some kind of opaque blur in front of the horror, whatever that force is that's doing that in some rotten way is let me protect the children. The people of the United States, they don't need, it's not tasteful to show that decapitated infant laying on bricks in a devastated city. It's not tasteful to show the throats being cut of people who are being treated like human cattle in some slaughterhouse. That's not tasteful. Let's not show that. Let's show a version of the world where, things are kind of bad, but they're not that bad. It's fucked up. What is the force that is getting in between the people and reality? Why is there a force that is warping what is actually happening in the world or attempting to soften it so that the people don't see what's really happening? What is that force?
Well, it's capitalism, because the powers to be are interested in things staying the same, or people feeling like things are the same, so that they continue getting mortgages and continue buying shit they don't need and continue voting for things that don't really affect anything. I mean, there are a lot of people in power who have vested interest in things remaining the way that they are.
Yeah. Exactly. And you were saying about, protecting the children from being exposed to that thing. I wish that was all it was, because maybe at that point you could have a conversation and reason with them. But I really think it's about views, and that's it. So it's news organizations are not going to show what doesn't get views.
Having the guts, or it just being late enough at night where I was just why don't I just see what this is all about? Just that one video has created a real shift in my thinking. And what you guys are saying, okay, what is the truth? What is the verifiable truth? And the verifiable truth is there is some organized effort to keep the people of planet Earth away from the truth. That's safe to say, right? Appears to be some group or network of groups that are at all costs trying to keep us from seeing what's really happening. And anytime anyone shows us what's really happening, Edward Snowden, for example, Julian Assange, anytime you get any glimpse of what is really going down, the way governments really work, those people are either arrested or they have to go into hiding. That's real. That's true, right? So that means that we are living under some kind of umbrella. We're living under some kind of dome of symbols that are being placed in between us and reality. And these symbols, because of technology, this dome is beginning to evaporate. And that's causing a lot of cognitive dissonance for many of us. I mean, when I was growing up here in the United States, I would regularly take LSD. And if you take LSD and stare at the dollar bill or currency, or if you take LSD and watch the news, or if you take LSD and do anything at all, then any conditioning that's been planted inside of you by corporations or by states or countries or whatever, it doesn't work for a second. A kind of weird window opens up and you see unfiltered reality. So when you watch the news, suddenly the reporters seem insane. Like, why are they talking like that? What is that rhythm? Why are they dressed like that? Why are they acting like that? They're not acting like people. People don't act the way they're acting. You think that. You look at money and you think, what is this paper? Why is this meant so much to me? This is just paper. This isn't real. What is this? This isn't real. And then you start looking at things through that lens, and it becomes obvious that you are under some kind of dome of propaganda. It's just you're not really sure why it's there, who made it, what it's shielding you from, what is it? And then when you come down, you tell your friends, man, I think that I'm not positive about this, but I think we might be living in a place where we are being brainwashed by some kind of very powerful group of people that's trying to make us think things that are not important are important, and things that are important aren't important. In fact, it appears that we're being hypnotized into believing that the right way to live is to trade our life energy in exchange for pieces of paper. And that's fucking insane, man. You say that when you're 17 or 18 after a great acid trip, and your friends are like, whatever, man, you're out of your, whatever. No, it's fine. This is normal. This is the best way to live. And then you could even rest on this idea of like, yeah, I just had a heavy acid trip. I'll just lay back and, you know what, I'm just kind of like, this is why they say if you take more than 3 hits of acid, you'll become permanently insane. This must be what it is. Because for a second, it's like it really did look like, the paper that we call money wasn't important at all. And the most important thing was to love people and be in the moment and to connect with nature. But yeah, I must have been fucking high. I was so stupid. And you could rest back into the idea that you just went a little crazy. And that actually there isn't a dome of propaganda separating you from reality. But now, thanks to the internet, no matter how hard they try to keep information away, we're getting the information. And I think this is creating a kind of cognitive dissonance that is yet another example of technological disruptions that are happening all over the planet. A kind of weird cognitive vertigo that a lot of people are experiencing right now because they're having to deal with the fact that we are not being shown the truth. The people of the earth are not being shown the truth. And you can maybe mine for the data. You can try to find the data. You can go on WikiLeaks. You can search for it, but you sure as fuck are not going to see it when you turn the TV on. And you're not going to see it when the president talks. And you're not going to see it when you open up the newspaper, because it's being intentionally hidden from us. And now we know it, which means that you have two choices. You either pick between allowing yourself to just subscribe to the propaganda as a form of laziness, or you face the truth, which is we're being lied to on a daily basis by people who aren't afraid to kill. And fuck, man, that's a mind fuck. That's a real serious mind fuck. I don't know where the in-between place to hang out is there. It's either you're just like, yeah, I'm just living in another time period where some power structure is using propaganda to make people act like robots, or you start going down that rabbit hole of who the fuck are these people and why?
All right, that's it for part 1 of this interview. The second part is going to be out shortly. When it's out, it will be at futurethinkers.org/episode 35. And if you want to check out the show notes and all the links and mentions for this part, go to futurethinkers.org/episode 34. And don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and all that other good stuff. We'll see you in the next one. Bye!